Our guest today is Matt Hochberg, founder of Hochberg Sports Marketing. Mark represents a lot of athletes, especially female athletes, in these kind of niche athlete spaces, which is a point of focus for our column to kind of get the underrepresented athletes some shine. So Matt, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, Nick, appreciate you having me.
Thank you. So, Matt, why don't you give us some background on your agency in terms of, when you got started as an agency and, how you came to see this opportunity for, as you say, niche athlete representation?
Sure, absolutely. So, Hochberg Sports Marketing was founded in December of 2019. Definitely an interesting time to launch a new company. A few months before the world shut down, essentially. But nonetheless, we've been at it almost 2 years now, and things have gone really well. So essentially, the whole thinking behind launching a new sports marketing agency in a very crowded space with lots of competing agencies was essentially from what I saw firsthand within the industry, which was most people were really only focused on the 1%, whether that was the 1% of athletes or the 1% of brands. So everyone knows the LeBron Jameses and Tom Brady's and Serena Williamses of the world. And don't get me wrong, those athletes are amazing and they're super fun to watch and they're talented and they deserve everything that they have. But that said, they really make up a tiny portion of the overall athlete landscape. Most athletes are not LeBron. Most athletes are just everyday people like you and me, but have been, have happened to, have been given a gift and have worked very hard to get to where they are, but, are not making millions of dollars, are not on national television every night, are not covered by the mainstream media on a regular basis. So we're here to serve them and ensure that they make the money that they deserve, to ensure that they can build their profiles and brands on social and digital channels, and through the media, to really, just build their brands and elevate their careers. And on the other end, there are all these brands out there that don't have the budgets of a Nike or Coca-Cola or Anheuser-Busch, but would be great fits for sports marketing. But every time they get approached for opportunities, it's for 6 or 7 figures. And what we found in speaking to many of them is that they have bad taste in their mouth of sports marketing because they're being pitched opportunities that they just simply cannot afford. So we are also helping truly to democratize sports marketing by getting these brands into the space by working with our niche athletes.
And I can see that because, some of them might have been taken for a ride by a potential client, or like you said, they've been priced out of the market in terms of the brands of, what they might need to play in a certain space. And here you come and say, look, here we have opportunity and we're going to show you why this makes sense for you. Whether brands step to you or vice versa, you go towards the brands. What analysis do you do to see that it either makes sense for them or for your clients to form these partnerships?
For sure. So when we sign on new athletes to represent them on their marketing and partnership opportunities, we do a deep dive into their interests, into their lives, into their hobbies. So when we're out there pitching brands in the marketplace and having conversations, we're not just randomly pitching athletes in order to strike a deal, but we're pitching athletes that align personally with those brands. In some cases, brands that those athletes are already using in their daily lives. So, for example, we have athletes who are primarily plant-based. So when we're out there pitching, we're specifically pitching in those cases plant-based companies who align with the athletes' passion for sustainability and their passion for animal rights in order to strike deals, which ultimately we've seen time and time again, those partnerships will perform much better because there's great alignment. The athlete is genuinely excited about the partnership, genuinely excited about, promoting that product and promoting that brand and it will just go a lot better. So, of course, at the same time, we're, speaking with the brands and listening to their goals and what they're looking to get out of these deals, and ensure that when we strike a deal, the deliverables are set in such a way to meet and exceed those brands' goals at the same time.
And starting out with the athletes that you have, right? They have obviously a range of followings when it comes to social media or the amount of exposure that their sport has, where you could get somebody that's up and coming or brand new, or that it might have a buzz coming out of college. How do you determine who's a good fit for your agency and that you would be able to put in a position to succeed with these brand partners?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it really comes down to a number of factors. You hit on, one key point, which of course is their following and engagement really across social. And while that is an important factor, that is certainly not the one determining factor that we look at when deciding which new athletes to take on. Their social is certainly important, and brands will take that into account when they're evaluating deals as well. But really, we're looking for athletes that can tell a story and that want to do this, right? There's some athletes, and it's completely okay, that are just not as into the partnership game as some others. So, if we're speaking with athletes who, maybe sure they're willing to do it, they want to make some money, but ultimately it's just not for them, then we're probably not the best fit. But for athletes who are passionate about engaging with their fans and engaging with their followers, and who want to share their story and who want to inspire the next generation of athletes, then we're the agency for them. So, and that ultimately helps us really help them when we're out there pitching brands, and we can tell that story to the brands regarding who these athletes are and why it makes sense for these brands who do not have unlimited marketing budgets. And we take that very seriously when brands do invest in our athletes to ensure these deals that we're going above and beyond for these brands, that they see success, and that they not only are happy with the deals, but ultimately that they renew these deals and we turn them into bigger and better deals, and ultimately are helping the brand grow at the same time as we're helping our athlete grow.
So you're saying that authenticity is a large part of this, right? Because you've mentioned the word alignment quite a bit, that, if the athlete and the product is aligned, that there's like a greater chance for success in terms of the partnership, at least what you've seen over the last few years in running the agency. That is true?
For sure. And that's not to say that every partnership with, between every brand and athlete has to be with a brand that the athlete has already engaged with.
Right.
That's certainly not the case. There are brands out there that, that we've taken in and have partnered with our athletes that the athletes may not have heard of previously, but they were excited about it. They stood for the same values, and those went really well. So there definitely should be a level of authenticity, but it's not like, it has to be a product or a brand that the athlete is using in their daily lives every day or something like that.
When we go back to the topic of social media, sometimes analysts have said that, there's kind of a magic number of followers in terms to get some level of sponsorship or partnership, usually when that starts creeping in the 5-figure range. What have you found in terms of follower count and how that relates to engagement, and then maybe the ability to help push a product?
Yeah. I'm really glad you asked that, because what we found with our niche athletes that we're working with is that time and time again, their engagement compared to the general benchmark influencer engagement number that is considered, it's considered average, which is 1% to 3%. To me, that is quite low, just looking at the athletes we're representing and their engagement numbers. So our athletes have anywhere from 5,000 to 150,000 followers, and I know that's a big range. But again, we're not just looking at the follower number, because you could have 10 million followers, but if no one's engaging with your content, if no one's commenting on the social media content, if no one's liking it, then who really cares if you have 10 million followers? So we're working with athletes, for example, who have 40, 50,000 followers, but may have a 10 to 20% engagement rate, which is pretty impressive if you look at the industry as a whole. So when we're going out there and pitching brands, we're saying, hey, these athletes, if you look at their content, their followers, their fans are actually engaging with the content. They're commenting on the posts. They're asking about the brands. And they're really just asking about the content that they're posting. And that's really the key right there. So, again, working with athletes anywhere from 5,000 to 150,000 followers and everywhere in between there. And then the engagement rate is really where I believe we have a difference, as opposed to other agencies.
In the space that you're in, that you say you do represent a lot of athletes that are in the AVP, NWSL leagues such as that.
Sure.
In that space, why do you feel, or what have you noticed about how the athletes and their fans, like why is there a higher level engagement in these maybe less televised sports?
Sure. Well, so I think when it comes to these more niche growing sports, NWSL, AVP, as you mentioned, those fans are super, super passionate. I don't think I've ever, I've been around the AVP for a number of years now. I don't think I've ever heard the term a casual AVP fan. Whereas, in the NBA or NFL world, I feel like you hear that all of the time. There is no such thing as that within these niche sports. So I think that's one major factor, is that the people who watch and interact with these leagues and players are extremely passionate. Number two, I also think if you just take a look at the industry as a whole, there is a massive shift toward additional investment and attention in women's sports specifically. And I think as we continue to see that increase, brands will continue to see additional benefits of those additional eyeballs that are now being paid attention to the leagues. If you look at the NWSL, they have a new team in Los Angeles that will be competing in the league beginning next year, I believe, Angel City FC. And you have investments from Serena Williams, the co-founder of Reddit, Alexis Ohanian, and many other prominent people within the athlete and investment worlds. So it just, people are starting to take the women's sports industry much more serious.
Yes, they are, and there's definitely been growth in that space. I mean, speaking of the AVP, they were purchased by Bally's earlier this year. And what potential do you feel like that brings for your clients with Bally's now in the picture with their regional sports networks and the finances that they have behind them?
Yeah, 100%. So I was actually just at the AVP Chicago Open this past weekend. So it was really interesting meeting with players, meeting with those who work for the AVP and are around the AVP very closely. And everyone's very excited about the Bally's purchase. People think just given who they are, the investment that they're apparently willing to make in the AVP to really take it to the next level can be a huge game changer for the tour. I mean, this is anecdotal, of course, but just as a sports fan, if any sports fan was at the AVP event, they would have a freaking blast. It's really just a fun event. And most of the country that would consider them sports fans probably don't even know that the AVP exists. Mm-hmm. So I think Bally's, obviously we've seen a big shift across the sports industry in terms of the increase in sports betting, gambling, and I think Bally's will bring that mindset to the tour in order to gain interest, especially gain interest from young people. I mean, at the end of the day, the AVP has, some of the best beach volleyball players in the world playing in that tour. So there's really no excuse for it not to be much bigger than it currently is.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people that follow the sport are excited about that possibility. And again, the added exposure for the athletes that you represent is only going to be a bonus. And before we talk about a few of the athletes that you represent, your agency, right, because they represent kind of niche athletes, and we were talking about the partnerships, which are very vital often to the survival of these athletes, because a lot of them are largely dependent on their tour earnings, which vary on how many stops there are, or if they have to potentially play internationally. And then, especially with like volleyball, a lot of the athletes are either working a full-time job or they're coaching, staying involved with the sport because they can't usually pay their bills with just off their tour winnings. So, what you do
Right.
may allow them, to operate more independently or focus more on their sport. Can you talk about maybe what a typical partnership would look like in terms of, finances? Because I think people look at like, some of the larger athletes that you mentioned earlier in the call, someone like Kevin Durant and his sneaker deal. And then maybe they
Right.
look at like, some of these athletes are like, oh, I've never heard of this brand. How much could they possibly be getting, to partner with this brand? So if you could give some light on what maybe a typical contract will look like, I think it would give the readers and the listeners, some insight into the scalability of what's going on in the space.
Sure, absolutely. And I just wanted to piggyback off one point you made regarding the earnings of the players on the beach. Most AVP players, so unless you're really, for the most part, you can't make a living off competing on the AVP. And it's very unfortunate in the sense that many athletes actually quit playing simply because they can't make a living off of it. Just too much of a time commitment to not make a living, essentially. They're really doing it for the love of the game. So hopefully as a part of this Volley's acquisition, they will be able to take that next step in order to one day not have to rely on coaching side gigs or working at a restaurant on the side or their brand deals in order to survive. And that's really the goal. To answer your question, it's really interesting because when we get on the phone with brands, every brand, I won't say every brand, but most brands that we speak with, love what we do and love the athletes we work with. And it's really just about the education and allowing these brands, really a peek inside the curtain to tell these brands that these athletes even exist. A lot of these brands we speak with don't know that these athletes exist. But once we share who these athletes are and tell their stories, we get very excited. When it comes down to what a typical deal looks like, it really runs the gamut. We do one-off deals that may include, say, one social media post, and that's that.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be for as little as $500. Right. And at the same time, the end goal is to find brand partners that want to invest long-term in these athletes and their careers and really grow alongside them. And that's where we see the most success, both from the athlete perspective and the brand perspective. And those deals can be anywhere from $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 and up for, say, a year-long contract. Those deals not only include social media, but we really try to build 360-degree customized partnerships that will, of course, there will be a social media component, but it will also include logo inclusion, on the athlete's outfits, or, specifically with AVP, they have a really neat partnership asset in which there can be temporary logos on the athlete's bodies as they play, which is a neat activation that most sports can't do. Appearances at the brand's retail locations, if they do have retail locations, integration into the athlete taking over the brand social media accounts and taking them through a day in the life of a professional beach volleyball athlete. So really trying to build 360-degree customizable partnerships to ultimately be as successful as possible, both from the athlete and brand side of things.
And could this also include like gear or nutritional supplements as well for the athletes, which are also like vital components of where their expenses go?
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up because I missed that. But yes, that is 100% a vital component of every deal. It's not just the deliverables in terms of what the athlete's doing, but it's the brand supporting that athlete, not only financially, but supporting them with products that they're actually using. So to your point, the protein powders of the world and supplements, those add up. Those are not cheap, as we all know. So the fact that brands are supporting these athletes financially and then supporting them through product is huge.
Mm-hmm. And it definitely is. And, from talking with many athletes, it's a job just in itself to take care of the nutrition end. And it's so vital, to the success because it plays a part in recovery and growth and, all those things that, athletes need to, fuel the experience, so to speak. Two of the athletes that you have, Corinne Quiggle and Allie Wheeler, 2024 Olympic hopefuls, which, I think is with the United States is always going to be an interesting to see, who's going to wind up there because it's going to come up on us, sooner than later. What's your strategy with both of them and how did they come to be, a part of your team?
Sure. When we look for athletes to begin representing, to add to what I said earlier, we're not just looking for any and every athlete. I mean, in an ideal world, we would represent every niche athlete in this country. Of course, just given the size of our team, that's not feasible. So when we're out there looking for athletes to represent, we're looking for athletes again who are passionate about telling their stories and inspiring young girls out there to not quit on their sport and to really pursue their dreams, and who want to share this on social media, who want to partner with brands, who identify with them and share the same values as them. So Corinne and Allie are two athletes who exemplify that to a T. Allie actually runs her own business. It's called AW Consulting, in which she works with high school volleyball players and helps them navigate the recruiting process, which she obviously went through herself when she was in high school and found it a bit difficult. So, how to send a coach a cold email, how to go about your recruiting video. So Allie started this company, which is amazing. And Corinne is, when she's not competing on the AVP tour or FIVB tour, she is coaching beach volleyball and coaching young girls in Los Angeles. So those, Corinne and Allie are two amazing examples of the type of athletes that we look for when seeking new athletes to represent. And of course, the fact that they are 2024 hopefuls, that they're both young and going for it for 2024 is very exciting as well, not only for us, but for the brands that we're speaking with.
Sure, because there could be a whole narrative built, around that over the next few years of the journey, right? While they're growing,
exactly,
and trying to make, the right strides to it. And I guess it opens up the international market too, because that's a huge part of qualifying. It's not just playing stateside, right? That there's now an international appeal that starts to come into this as well.
Right. That's very true. And in terms of that narrative, it's not like we're pitching this saying, hey, Corinne and Allie are going to be in the Olympics, and if they're not, then it's a bust.
Right.
That's not what we're saying.
Because it's hard to get those two spots. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's really just about the story. It's really about the journey of going for it and pursuing your dream. So that's really what we're excited about and what the brands are excited about. Of course, it would be amazing if they do make the Olympics, but we're really just focusing on the journey to get there and the brands who want to support them along the way. In terms of what you're saying regarding the international market, that's huge as well, because keep in mind, a lot of the brands we work with may not yet be international. Of course, some are, but not all are. But many have plans to be within the next, 1, 2, 3 years. So to have two American athletes that are playing literally across the world, competing against athletes from all walks of life, that is extremely attractive to the brands we're speaking.
Yeah, I can imagine so, because again, that exposure is just something it's a reach that they can't get, and I guess this is where you're able to step in, right, and help them expand their reach through these partnerships.
Exactly. For a brand that is seeking international exposure, the fact that we can offer, their logo on the, as a temporary tattoo on the skin of two American world-class athletes who are going for the Olympics, say whether they're playing in Italy or the Czech Republic or Los Angeles. I mean, that is a really unique offering that that standard influencers can't offer, that most athletes can't offer. So, of course, that's just one example, but it just goes to show you the unique type of partnerships that we're looking to deliver on.
Maybe do two more questions, and again, I appreciate the time, and this has really been a learning experience for me. Some of the numbers, that you had mentioned where, the deals may range from a few $100s and, or even potentially just like, we might start out as like gear, right? And then move up from that way, that maybe when it follows an athlete for a whole season, now we're reaching, $15, $20, $25,000. For yourself to be able to, run this and for it to be profitable for you, obviously you're getting a cut of, the deals for helping to orchestrate them and manage, all the other things that go into running a sports marketing agency.
Sure.
What's it been like for you to be able to, build your business, being that, it's not like, all right, we're getting this one huge contract coming in. It's about managing like this quantity of smaller contracts so they add up to something that, is sustainable for you so that you, and your crew can do the job for the people that you represent.
Right. That's a great question. And to answer very bluntly, so it's a grind. That's first off, it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of calls, emails, not only to close deals, but then ultimately to manage those deals and ensure that they go very well and that we're over delivering for these brands, to then ensure that they continue to invest in the athletes that we're representing. So it's certainly a lot of work. When we first launched, I felt that we were really just looking for anything that we could find. But I feel, now, we're going to be on year 2 coming up in a couple months. And I believe that we've established our value. We've secured some nice long-term clients who believe in the agency, who believe in the athletes we're representing. Now we've started to be a bit more selective about who we're going out and finding for our athletes, because ultimately we're representing athletes and we want the best for them. We're not looking to partner them with any brand that's just looking to spend, some money on them or to send them some other product. We're really looking for the best of the best for these athletes. And that, that's not to say they have to be a Nike or be a Coca-Cola, but really that next generation of brands coming up that we see a lot of potential in. So it's definitely a lot of work, but again, we've been able to establish a solid base of clients on the brand side, as well as a solid base of athletes, in which we're in a really good place right now.
How do you have any plans to get into the NIL space, being that you're dealing with, women's athletes and college athletics is huge, and that most of these female athletes in college have the opportunity to play in front of a very dedicated fan base, for 4 years, right? Whether, they're playing for USC or Pepperdine, right? Like,
right.
They have a lot of eyes on them, and the college fans are very loyal, and they can build their narrative for 4 years. Where are you at with that in pursuing NIL deals for college athletes? Or are you even there yet with your company?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Given the confusion around NIL, each state has their own policies, schools have their own policies. We've taken a slow approach. That said, just a couple of weeks ago, we did sign our first NIL athlete, which we're really excited about. Her name is Brianna Alger. She's a soccer player on Washington State. And we identified her specifically as someone who has a lot of potential just to, be a successful, NIL athlete. and really just a great athlete for us to represent. She's a women's soccer player at Washington State, and she was the first one we signed. Again, we're taking a slow approach, just ensuring we only bring on athletes that we believe we could be successful for, as well as ensuring we don't take on too much at one time.
Right, and like overextend yourselves.
Exactly, and that doesn't help anyone if we take on too many athletes and we can't deliver for all of them. That's not what I want. So taking a slow approach, but obviously NIL opens up a massive opportunity. So really excited about the future there, and we'll see what happens.
Matt, if people want to reach out to you via social media or website, can you drop some information about where people can, connect with you to keep up with your company and your athletes?
Yeah, absolutely. You can visit our website, which is hochbergsm.com. Hochberg is Hochbeerg. You could also interact with me personally on Twitter at Hochberg. My DMs are always open, and really would love to hear from anyone interested in connecting, whether regarding questions or inquiries or anything like that.